This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Ben Watch Chestnut. As we always say, the show must go on. And for this week's Weigh-In Podcast, Takedown Thursdays, we're going to talk about Draft Mania. Now, not a physical draft, but we're going to pull up a lot of this happenings of the transfer portal. So let's get you caught up so you're on with what we call Draft Mania. So one of the things we're going to talk about, Lenny Pinto of the Nebraska Cornhuskers headed to Rutgers. Shocker. The biggest shocker of it all, UNC lands A.J. Ferrari. Then they get Bryce Hefner from Ohio State to transfer. So now we're talking. So now you also have Rocky Elam also in the transfer portal, but he has yet to fall anywhere. So you got Rocky Elam, and then this is another big one. National champ Richie Fix to Okie State. So, like when I say, the Cowboys had a good group last year, now you line up an even better group because, look, if you put, I say this with the best way possible, if you put either Richie Fix 125, Troy Spratley 133, or Richie Fix, Richie Fakes 33, Spratley stays at 25. You can do a lot of bumping up here. And why I say this, that's gonna make the difference with that lineup. You got a natty champ coming to town. It's not, and I don't say that to say in terms of intimidation. I say that in terms of, okay, now you're starting to see this is a big Cowboy group. Now you already understand they got Zach Ryder. Now let's talk about, the biggest story of it all. My boy, Dean Peterson. I say that because, we, not for the pod, but we closely follow Dean off to Iowa. Shocker. You're seeing things that you don't normally see as much as you would think. So that's a big thing there. So you look at that, and then you got Alex Fundungo also, so this has happened this year. So you're starting to notice, and you know what? That brings in the topic of, that brings in the topic of you're going to start to see that a lot of the guys, it's going to die out, but you're going to start to see a lot of the guys that wanted to be there for David Taylor and that were there because of David Taylor are going to start wanting to, almost in a sense, you're going to see them want to join back David Taylor, and that's what we saw with Alex Fundungo. And now Alex is off to Okie State, so now you got an early look at this lineup. You got Alex Fundungo could be added somewhere. You got Zach Ryder if you do it right. You have Richie Fakes, and you still have Troy Spratley. You got some guys that, and you added Richie Fakes because you fear the level of Gilman may cause Troy Spratley off to Penn State. And that is why you kind of say you added. That's another reason why I would think you add that national champ. You say, okay, Gilman's headed back to Penn State. And if Troy Spratley really, really bonded with Gilman and really liked Gilman, you're like, Gilman left. Why am I here? I'm up and at him. So, and if you're Kale, listen, your 25 wasn't in the NCAA finals. You'll be open to picking up another guy that'll score you more team points because you understand this is a chase to beat Kale. That's what we called it on the podcast. That's what I'm still calling it, a chase to beat Kale. If you continue to add, because Oklahoma State, they're stacking up a lineup, man. You had a national champ, you had Alex, you had Zach Ryder. Like, they added some good pieces. Now, don't tell them these are some good pieces now. There's some good pieces now. And when we talk about that, you're saying these pieces that they've added now are going to add almost a difference, a level of like, okay, now we've added, you know, our national champ. We've added two guys actually from Penn State. So okay, you took Kale's two guys. So Kale's lost two guys. We know Sanderson. It's not a big deal. We know it doesn't matter for Kale. But whether there be big hits, if you're Rutgers, yeah, let's fly over that one real quick. Your Rutgers losing Dean Peterson was like he was going to be an All-American for Rutgers. I think part of the reason why is because he wants to maximize his potential. Dean Peterson is a real stucky guy, and I say stucky. Stucky as in the point is I'm going to explain why I say stucky. Stucky because when you wrestle Dean Peterson, it's not something you can figure out. You never know what's coming. He's got a lot of stuff flying out, and that's why that was a good NCAA run. Hated that he missed the All-American, but good run. Peterson at Rutgers, it's going to take a lot to understand that. But don't forget, at Iowa. But don't forget here. Let's not forget here. Iowa also has Bo Bassett. So you wonder if we already know Bo Bassett's a great wrestler, but the level of expertise Dean Peterson has in creating the upset. It's not All-American, but the upset at the Division I NCAA level. Will that have a positive effect on Bassett? Yes, it will. Yes. I'm going to tell you right now, yes, it will. Because now you have a guy, and Iowa's already a good group. Don't get me started. Now you got an RTC room with Spencer Lee. You've got you got a lot of guys over there in that RTC that those are guys you can roll around with. And you know what? We ain't talking enough about Cowboy RTC. I know we talk about our Oklahoma State Cowboys a lot. You would say this podcast is fans. Zahid Valencia is in that Oklahoma Cowboy room, and so is Joey McKenna. I don't know how we missed that one. So really, we talked all year about, hey, you got Roman Bravo Young, you got Dayton Fix, they got Zahid Valencia, and then when you think it's done, you got Joey McKenna. So I really think in terms of like, not saying the coaches, but in terms of like, hey, you see Joey McKenna, you say, hey, those are solid guys to roll around. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like they're all upper weights where you're like, all right, you got a couple lightweight guys in there, and you think that this is going to add an expertise. Like I say with Alex, that left Penn State for Oklahoma State. You're going to see some of those recruits, the recruits that David is getting that say, oh, they were almost killed. They were there for David Taylor. They were there for a moment to learn from Taylor and to, be able to do that. Taylor's running his own team now. So you are going to start to see somebody who say, I would have went to Penn State, to hang out and learn from David Taylor. I understand Kale's the guy, but, there's so much that David Taylor can teach and nurture. Right. Now David Taylor's gone. So now they're off to where Taylor is because they want to learn. And now he's running a group, and you're like, well, you might want to be over there because you're looking at this draft mania, I will call it, and everything's happening. Like, look at this. Like, okay, Zach Redding transfers to NC State. Like, and then, okay, so let's see. There was one that Rocky Elam. I'm looking at the post right now. It says we'll be shooting a show to talk about the transfer as soon as he finalizes a decision. Gonna be a great pickup. Now, this is Bashmania. That's where I'm reading this from. The Bashmania podcast. I know we're reading from another pod. It's okay. Let's read this here. As soon as he finalizes a decision. Okay. And you wonder why I call it a draft. Look, he's got offers on the table. A couple teams want to draft him, so everybody's setting up a deal. You wonder why I call it a draft mania. It's like, okay, It's a modified draft mania. And I say modified because look, he's got choices on the table. Most could say this is recruitment. No, it isn't. No, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. Okay, you don't got a 97. You see, okay, you don't got a 97. Okay, let's just look at this. You don't got a 97, or you don't have a huge upper weight, and then you see AJ Ferrari hit the thing. A former national champ hit the thing, and you say, oh well, he didn't win that last year. Kyle Bakerfield wasn't doing it for him. That's what I felt like. Okay, it you got to surround yourself with the best, and now you add him, then you get Bryce Hefner. Like, okay, you're turning around. If you're NC State, you're like, okay, hey, everybody's kind of throwing their hands. Say, I want to pick you. I want to draft you. Do you want to come here? If I picked you, and it's like, okay, it's basically like you're sitting around, you're waiting. You say, okay, you're my pick. Hey, I'm reaching out. I want to pick you. Well, you're waiting to see, hey, does somebody else get him? You know, it's going to be interesting. And then, what really surprised me is that Lenny Pinto to Rutgers. That really surprised me. You know, and now when I read this post, I understand why he left. So his former teammate Mikey Labriola, I'm going to very well go and check. Former teammate Mikey Labriola is part of the Rutgers staff. So when you bring this up, it's okay. He wants to be back with Mikey, his former teammate. So there's just no way to say that the first chance he got, he took it. First chance he got, he took. You can't blame him for anything like that because first chance he got, like literally first chance he got, he took that chance, and that is absolutely apologetically very crazy. First chance, that's just something that you just think is absolutely crazy. First chance he got. First chance he got. So that's something that you look at it and you say, wow. We talk in terms of like what just happened. You got a lot of guys transferring left and right. You got guys going absolutely crazy. You got guys going certain places that we would have never thought. But when you look at the situation, Leonard Pinto, Lenny, um, there's a clear reason why he did that, and you wanna reunite yourself with your teammate. Nothing wrong with that. You know, another pick for the Cowboys, Braden Thompson hit the transfer portal. So I'm just today's up. And if you don't understand today's up, he's just gonna break down this transfer portal and all these moves. Of wrestling as the season is drawn to an end in Olympic team trials. I mean, not Olympic team trials, but world team trials, and all of that has yet to get up. You know, um, so the U.S. Open, for the instance, you know, you got Bo Bassett gonna wrestle the U20s, so that's gonna be interesting. You know, as I'm gonna say right now, Bassett Mania. Um, you know, it's just you got TJ Stewart of Virginia Tech Hokies hits the transfer portal. You know, you've got you got so many, it's just so many, you know, So many good things like going through and just it's a lot to like unpack. Lot to unpack here. Minnesota adds some pieces. You know, you just look at so many. You got the U-23 Pan Am team, and that team looks stacked. You got Luke Lillardall, you got Zane Fidget, Luke Lillardall, 57 kilo. You got 61 kilos, Zane Fidget, 65. You have CJ Composto, 7. You got John Willie, Hunter Gravin, Levi Haynes, Jackson Smith, Connor Mersolio. You got Mass Membum, Ender Aim, Mass Munda, Ender Aim. You got Lucas Studard. Looks like it's stacked up for the Americans there. You know, you're right. Right. The Bash Mania reposted a tweet from Justin Bash. What a wild week in the past 7 days. You know, Zach Ryder transfers to Oklahoma State. Alex Fandango transfers to Oklahoma State. Right. Peterson transfers to Iowa. Nazir Bailey transferred to Iowa. Jordan Williams transfers to Iowa. Okay. So Iowa stacking up. You know, you know. Rocco Welsh transfers to Penn State. Jordan Vogt transfers to Minnesota. Zach Redding transfers to NC State. Tyzen uh, Turkania transfers to UNC. Van Cuter out for 4 to 6 months with hip surgery. Wow. Olympic champ Kyoto Agato retires. Wyatt Henderson. Oh yeah, Wyatt Henderson went to Hodge. And it said AJ Ferrari near slash decision slash announcement. No, AJ Ferrari is at UNC. So we've already broke that down. Wyatt Henderson winning that Hodge. Good for him. Like, couldn't be more proud, that you go out there, you beat, a guy who Gable Steepson, I believe, hasn't had a loss since 2019. And then you go and you beat him. After you walk out and he stands right there all in your face. So you go out there and you beat him. Like, there's no better way to say, hey, gotta watch your mouth when you're in there. Gotta watch your mouth. Can't go up and stand up in front of a guy and say, yeah, I'm Gable Stevenson, and then you got beat. So then now that's gonna play for years to come, and they're gonna say, oh, Gable, remember when you did this? Did you win that match? No, no. But been a I agree. I agree with that tweet. It's been a wild 7 days. It has been, you know. And then you add okay. And then you add Richie Fakes to Okie State. It's been wild. It's been wild, man. It's been wild, and I say that it's been wild because last last between the last few episodes we said this, we called it a draft, and then you turned around and you see all this. Like, this is okay. There's recruiting. There's preseason recruiting. This is how I look at any you know college wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, or any wrestling involving the transfer portal. You have preseason recruiting. These are the guys I want. You have, okay, you lose a couple guys graduating. Okay, now you look, you say, okay, my recruit may not be coming next year. Let me see what's in the transfer portal. Let me see what I can draft. Let me see what I can pick up. When you pick it right, pick up. What can I pick up? Now you look at that and you say, okay, let me. You're drafting. You're drafting somebody. You're saying, hey, I want to pick you up. And you say, okay, let me see what I can add. And if you and when this is all, and this is going to be wild for months, if you give a grade letter for the teams that have done really well, you know, listen, I got Oklahoma State A, at an A grade so far, in terms of picking up Richie Figs and what do they got? I've got Rutgers. That Lenny Pinto, you lost Dean because, well, I won't say because. I say you lost Dean visibly because, I think you want to be an All-American. You want to be a national champ. And you're just not getting through it. And, you know, if if anybody knows it best, it's, I would say it's Nicholas Sirianni, where he said if you can't, he made a quote about changing your environment, you got to change what's around you. Um, but okay, if we give UNC a great, that's an A. You picked up former national champ, two-time, national champ, one and a national champ, and All-American Agent Ferrari. More than likely, I say 99.9%. There's still always that 1%. AJ Ferrari is going to be, I would say, couple-time national champ, but in the feared most, 99.9, it's easy to say, okay, he's going to be four-time All-American. He's going to, if not a national champ in his next couple of years, he's going to All-American out. That is nothing but the truth. But when you look at, okay, you give UNC that grade. Okay, you know what, another one. We got to give Iowa an A grade. You pick up Dean Peterson. You pick up, you just start, boom, boom, boom. You pick the guys up, and you pick them up. You pick them up. You pick them up. So, obviously the Oklahoma State Cowboys lose Braden Thompson, but all honesty here, I think David Taylor's going to do all right, and I think you look at a lot of what goes on, and that's going to be interesting. And I say that because in terms of everything, that's going to be, that's going to be huge, huge. Because now you look at, okay, the chase. I'll always call it this: the chase to beat Cael Sanderson. Sanderson was able to do very well last year, but you have to understand the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the Oklahoma State University Cowboys got trophies. So here's the thing: if I'm Cael, you can sleep at night, but David Taylor is going to be a demise to you winning more titles if he gets the right team. And it may be a couple of years, but when he does, I think Okie State's going to be on top for a while. Because okay, he just took over, he medaled. Okay, you could say he got all those guys in the transfer portal, but no. Just because he drafts well has nothing to do with anything else. Just drafted very well. I call it draft mania. Drafted very well. And to get the guys he got, two national champs, you can't hold that off right there. You can't. And then beats Gable Steveson. Like, okay, come on. Gail's got a guy. Kirk Fleet. What? Kirk Fleet? Couldn't do it. Kirk Fleet couldn't get through Wyatt. So you look at when you really bring it down, you really base it down. I think David Taylor's got something going on. What's going to be exciting is, Kyle Dake had 4 more years of wrestling. So when he turns into a head coach, that's going to be another. You just wait. Taylor has got it, and when he starts landing it, you give it a couple of years of building that wrestling over there. He's bound to get a team title. He's bound to get a team title. He is bound to get a team title, and when he does, I think that's not going to be the peak of Oklahoma State of the Oklahoma State University Cowboys. I think the Okie State, it's going to be that's going to just be the start of it, because you're seeing that there is a lot of guys that they look at Penn State, Okie State, and they're like, they look at the Cowboys and they're already like, okay, yes, you're taking a huge hit, losing Gilman, but if all stands to be, you have to replace Gilman, yeah, you're gonna have a huge role to replace. I say huge because Gilman is that guy that you understand. He was there for Troy Spratley. He was there, Gilman, when you look at Gilman's career, you have to understand Gilman was, a more than great, an amazing wrestler. You know, you have to understand, you're not going to see a lot of what I would call old school wrestling, the good old school wrestling, and, because it's just a lot of it is like just absolute crazy. But you learn that Gilman was a great wrestler when he was in college. There's a lot to learn from Gilman. And I think you want to add somebody that's of that significance, that's got a factor enough piece that you're bringing something to the table that was different. Gilman brought something different. You have to say, is it something different being brought to the table? And if that is the case, we're saying you would say, hey, that like Gilman is your guy. You got to replace that guy. And how are you going to replace that guy? So, it's going to be interesting to see who replaces Gilman. But now, you got some guys on that RTC side of the Cowboys that might look good, real good. Like you got enough that I'm not saying you got to pull talent to replace Gilman, because no. But what I'm saying here is you got to find that right guy. You've got some guys that that are going to be very well. Like, all right, like when we talk about UNC, more than enough said that like that UNC group. When we talk about UNC, like they've got a group. And when I say that, I say they have a real good group that's coming for them over there. And I say that because they're getting you got AJ Ferrari over there. And that's just gonna get even better, You can't get him, it can't get any better than that. And then at UNC, don't even get me started. You got Chinzo Joseph over there. So whether it's told or not, it's like, all right, you know. So you got guys over there. You got guys over there where it's like, okay, you know, and there were a lot of good schools in there that were in the running, as you probably all already seen, but it was North Carolina, it was Iowa, it was Okie State, um, Penn State, Rutgers, Michigan, Iowa State. Okay, we love Okie State, but you can understand why, you know, I don't know. You can understand why, that would be up there. Why he would want to go back, or, anything like that. Well, with that being said, I understand this wasn't a full, crazy segmented episode, but I brought to you just what I call Draft Mania, just breaking down a lot of that transfer portal, and that is, you know, uh, utmost in the moremost today's episode, going over that transfer portal, going over some of the happenings of wrestling right now. And I think that there's just more and less to say that, as more stuff comes to come out, we'll have exciting episodes. And, you will be kept posted on when we will return to the regular scheduled program. As I always say, There is no time frame on that. But we're getting episodes out. We're doing what we have to do. So on that, the sheer most, we're doing what we can do. Again, I'm bringing this to you guys, episode after episode, keeping up that streak. And I just think that this is the best view and look we've got going. And I would like to say breakdown of the transfer portal today and, just the chase to beat Kale, I think that there's plenty of things to say. There's plenty of things to go about. There's plenty of things to be weary of. And I think right now you look at that and you say, okay, it is a chase to beat Kale, and that will happen. One way or another, it doesn't have to say it's going to be Okie State. I'd love it to be the Oklahoma State Cowboys, but a lot of these other teams are stacking up too, so it's going to get real interesting. Like, Iowa's probably going to make a strong season next year, and if you're Kale, you're going to need something. Because if that Iowa's got it going, they're going to make some noise. They're going to make some noise. Now, don't get it twisted. The brands over there know what they're doing. They're going to make noise. Especially you got Dean Peterson, who every year just fell, around, not every year, but previous years, fell around before becoming an All-American. That is an All-American for you right there. Dean will be an All-American. Don't get it twisted. So, with that being said, this is this week's Takedown Thursdays. And, like, comment, subscribe. You like us, keep watching. Keep on the lookout, for some of the other things we're going to be doing. We're always posting on Instagram episodes, but, any happenings, and if we're going to be going to events or anything like that, I would always please check Instagram. If anything like that, we announce it over Instagram. If not over Instagram, you more than likely will see it as an almost as an immediate release press post. So there's that. We do those sometimes. Not a lot, but we do them sometimes if we know we're going to an event or we know we have an update in our schedule or just stuff like that. We do. But with that being said, we're still working on getting you some more guests and more people like that. But for now, it is the building blocks, the foundation of what it is. I'm here to bring you another episode, and that is this episode. Sometimes there might not be, true, as I say, true full segments. Like today was just Draft Mania. It was all over the place, but I bring you something. So this is the weigh-in. With that being said, I think I'm saying this twice, but it's okay. This is the weigh-in. This is the weigh-in by Benoit Chestnut and normally Sebastian Romero, but don't worry, we will return to our regularly scheduled program soon. Weigh-in out.
The weigh-in where stories ignite by Benoit Chestnut.